And that's where we begin tonight. Legal accountability for one man, Donald Trump, from two different courts. Trump certainly believes that the rules do not apply to him. It's a central part of who he is as a person. But in one court, the New York State Supreme Court, we are waiting on a decision from Judge Juan Marchand on whether Donald Trump will face consequences for 10 alleged violations of his gag order in his hush money election interference trial. Trump seems to be going out of his way to prove a point that prosecutor Christopher Conroy argued on Tuesday. He knows what he's not allowed to do, and he does it anyway. It turns out in an interview just minutes before that hearing on the gag order started, Trump committed what appears to be yet another violation of the gag order, going after his former fixer, Michael Cohen, a key witness, during an interview with a local Philadelphia station.
Michael Cohen is a convicted liar, and he's got no credibility whatsoever. He was a lawyer, and you rely on your lawyers, but Michael Cohen was a convicted liar.
Now, it should be noted, yes, by his own admission, Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress and lying to a bank. So Trump is not making that part up. But it's important to remember why he committed those crimes and who he did them for. He did it to protect Donald Trump. Cohen lied to Congress about business deals Trump pursued in Russia while he was running for president because Trump wanted him to conceal those business deals so his Russia baggage wouldn't look so obvious. And Cohen lied to a bank to take out a home equity line of credit to pay to silence a woman alleging a sexual relationship with Donald Trump, namely Stormy Daniels. Trump weirdly keeps leaving out those details, what he calls his former personal attorney and fixer, a criminal, in clear violation, by the way, of a gag order. Tomorrow, there will be another chance to hold Donald Trump accountable in an unprecedented case with farther-reaching implications, not just for him, but for our democracy. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments in Donald Trump versus the United States about whether he can claim sweeping presidential immunity over his criminal election interference charges from special counsel Jack Smith. But even for the conservative majority on the court, here's one word of arguments. It is important to recognize the gift that they've already handed to Trump, namely time, and plenty of it, with a months-long delay. They refused Jack Smith's request to fast-track this case in December before a single Republican primary vote had been cast, sending it instead to the D.C. Circuit Court. The court also could have just affirmed the decision by the D.C. Circuit Court, which found that a president, surprise, surprise, does not in fact have absolute immunity from prosecution, after Trump's lawyers made this absolutely absurd argument that they could reprise tomorrow.
Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes.
Instead, this 6-3 right-wing majority court, 3 of whom were nominated by Donald Trump, and another whose wife actively encouraged Trump's efforts to overturn the election and attended the rally that preceded the attack on the Capitol. They will decide whether or not Trump is above the law, even as he is already the presumptive Republican presidential nominee. Friends of the show, legal experts Melissa Murray and Andrew Weissman write in the New York Times that the court has already botched the immunity case, noting the court's decision to review the immunity case actually undermines core democratic values. And joining me now is the aforementioned Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel, MSNBC legal analyst, and co-host of the Prosecuting Donald Trump podcast, and Timothy Hafey, former lead investigator for the House January 6th Select Committee. I forgot my copy of my book. I always bring the Trump indictments book everywhere I go. I take it around like Trump takes his pretend Bible that he wrote the open to. Say more. Your op-ed was important, so I want you to say more.
Sure. You know, what we really focused is on time, on the thing that you were talking about, because the main issue here is you can understand the Supreme Court if it wanted to say, you know what, we as the Supreme Court have never actually ruled on something as crazy as a president saying they're absolutely criminally immune from prosecution.
Yeah.
So we've never addressed that. We've only addressed that in the civil context. So I could understand that they might want to weigh in on that. There's no way that there's going to be immunity in this case, even if you think that there's going to be some small area that the president should be criminally immune. I'm
Yeah.
not sure there should be, but
Yeah.
it's certainly not this case
Yeah.
where there's private action for private gain. It's just not an official duty. And so what's the real harm here is that the Supreme Court could have taken it, as you noted, in December. They could have, if they were going to take it a couple months ago, instead of December, they could have said, we're going to fast track it, and we would have heard arguments already.
Yeah.
Instead, there has been a stay in the D.C. federal case since December. That case was originally scheduled for trial March 4th. You know where we are now? we could easily be waiting for a jury verdict right
That's
now.
right.
And so what I'm hoping is that at the arguments tomorrow, that the justices focus on speed. Like, what legitimate argument does Donald Trump have for why this shouldn't be decided immediately? Or the court could say, let's lift the stay tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll hear from you, but you know what? You don't have 5 votes for presidential immunity in this case. The
Yeah.
stay is lifted.
Yeah.
The case can go forward. We'll issue an opinion in time.
Sure.
That's something they have done. It's something other courts have done. And that would, I think, in some way absolve them from what they have done so far. But I have to say the tea leaf reading, not good.
Not good. And Timothy Hafey, just reprise for us, just for folks who have, it's gone in the memory hole. It's been so long since January 2021. Trump's role as an investigator of January 6th in what happened.
He was the leader of a multi-part intentional conspiracy to disrupt the joint session and interfere with the peaceful transfer of power. The story, Joy, that we told over the course of the Select Committee's hearings and in the final report, very similar to the evidence that has been amassed by and will be presented by the special counsel. He is far and away the proximate cause of the riot, as the committee found and as the special counsel will have the burden to prove in the trial.
Right. And Tim, if you were, and I'll ask both of you, if Donald Trump were not president of the United States, given the fact that people are spending 20 plus years in prison for what happened on January 6th, I'll start with you, Tim Hafey. Would he have been a defendant in a case were he not the president, like long before now?
Absolutely. Look, the Justice Department started with the blue-collar cases, the people that were at the Capitol, and they eventually got around to the white-collar defendants, like the chief among them, the former president. But absolutely, Joy, regardless of his status as the president of the United States, his conduct, as the Select Committee recommended and as the special counsel has now indicted, absolutely merits criminal prosecution.
And by